Good morning and thank you for coming. My name is Jeffrey Schwab, and I am an attorney at the Liberty Justice Center. The Liberty Justice Center is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, public interest litigation center that brings lawsuits to enforce government limits on power and to protect individual rights in Illinois. We're filing a lawsuit today on behalf of our client, Vugo, against the City of Chicago. But this lawsuit affects tens of thousands of rideshare drivers throughout the city. The City of Chicago allows advertisements on or in taxi cabs and ordinary passenger vehicles. But the rules are different for ride-sharing companies. The city bans people who drive ride-sharing for ride-sharing vehicles like ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft from displaying advertisements in their vehicles. This arbitrary ban on ride-sharing drivers prevents them from making extra money. It prohibits our client, Vugo, from operating in the city, and it unfairly favors taxi companies against ride-sharing drivers. The city shouldn't be picking winners and losers. The city's discriminatory treatment against ride-sharing companies violates the rights to free speech and equal protection of the law under the United States and Illinois Constitution. There's no good reason to prohibit advertising in ride-sharing vehicles while allowing it in taxi cabs. There's no difference between ride-sharing and taxis that justifies banning commercial advertising in one while allowing it in another. Our client, Vugo, provides interactive media and advertising that ride-sharing drivers can choose to display on tablet devices in their vehicles. Vugo shares a percentage of the its ad revenue with its drivers who display its software. Because the city's ban on advertising in ride-share vehicles, Vugo is denied an opportunity to improve the ride-sharing experience for both drivers and for passengers. And ride-sharing drivers are denied an opportunity to provide an enhanced experience for their riders and to make additional income. We're filing our lawsuit today in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois. We're asking the court to declare Chicago's discriminatory advertising ban on ride-sharing vehicles unconstitutional and to permanently enjoin its enforcement. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob Flesner, co-founder and CEO of Vugo.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rob Flesner. I am the co-founder and CEO at Vugo. Vugo is a mobility media company. We place digital media, entertainment, advertisements in for-hire vehicles. We do this using a technology that we developed called Trip Intent, which takes data about a trip, like origination, destination, things like that, and makes it available to advertisers and media partners to target and curate the experience for passengers in the back of the car. About 5 years ago, my co-founder, James Belfi, moved to the city of Chicago to work at an ad agency and drove for Uber in the evenings to help make ends meet. And one of the first individuals he met here when he moved here was a restaurant owner who asked him, would you take this paper menu, put it in the back of your car, and we'll see what happens. Sure enough, James did that, and passengers in the back of the car were asking him, hey, it's lunchtime, dinner time, could you just bring me to this restaurant? I'm kind of hungry and the menu looks pretty good. So after this happened a number of times, that's what spurred the idea for Vugo. And when we started Vugo, we quickly learned that the city of Chicago would not let us operate within the city and work with rideshare drivers. So we moved our operations from Chicago to Minneapolis instead, which is where we're headquartered. Vugo has about 8,000 drivers nationwide that use the platform, and drivers make 60% of all ad revenue within the cars. This weekend, as an example, we're running a guarantee promotion within Los Angeles, where drivers can make a guaranteed 25 cents extra per trip. This will result in $30, $40, $50 this weekend for drivers. Drivers in Chicago do not have that opportunity. Thank you, and we'll open up for questions.
I have a question.
Yep.
You said you're already in Minneapolis, LA, and San Francisco. What has been the response from the rideshare drivers as far as what is the percentage of extra money that they can make with your service?
Sure, that's a good question. Drivers that we talk to absolutely love Vugo. They like using Vugo and having the opportunity to make more money. over the past couple years, drivers have seen their wages effectively slashed just through the competitive nature of ride sharing. And so for a lot of them, it's that they're barely making minimum wage. And so any way they can make more money is a big deal. And so for a lot of our drivers, we do a 60-40 rev share with them, and that can constitute anywhere between $20 or $30 more per month to a few $100s more per month.
And this might be a question for you, but the city of Chicago says they haven't seen the lawsuit yet. Has it not technically been filed?
We filed it this morning a few hours ago.
Seen it, been notified, or?
We haven't served them yet, so they probably have not seen it.
Jeffrey, this is a question for you. I mean, you are obviously aware that the regulations governing ride-sharing vehicles are different from the regulations governing taxi cabs. They aren't the same, or they aren't treated the same. The standards and regulations are not the same. So why should there be no difference in how something like advertising is handled in what is essentially supposed to be a private vehicle?
Right, but as I mentioned, ordinary passenger vehicles aren't prohibited from displaying advertising. So there's really no difference in even though they're different, really technically different services, there's no difference inherent in those services that justifies banning advertising in one while allowing it in the other.
But wouldn't the kind of advertising that you're talking about make that private vehicle then more of a commercial vehicle and subject to more stringent regulations?
So the city of Chicago provides a permitting process for taxi cabs to advertise, and it completely prohibits rideshare vehicles from having any advertising. And to the extent that they want to separate that, they could create a permitting process if they wanted, just like they do for taxi cabs. But in essence, this service that our client provides would really not make ride-sharing vehicles any different than they are today.
Jeffrey, to be specific, how is this unconstitutional? What part of the Constitution? This is a breach of?
So this violates the right two provisions in both the Illinois and United States Supreme Court or constitutions: the right to free speech, which is protected by the First Amendment and Article 1, Section 4 in the Illinois Constitution, and equal protection. Advertising is speech under United States Supreme Court precedent, and it's subject to scrutiny, especially when it's completely prohibited. And that scrutiny is enhanced when, like here, the government is saying that some speakers can say things that other speakers can't.
Is there a lesser scrutiny when it's commercial speech, though?
That's true. The commercial speech is somewhat less scrutinized, but still under the lesser scrutiny, this case would violate the First Amendment. And because it's content based, and because they're picking people that can say and can't say, that subjects that speech to a higher scrutiny, to strict scrutiny.
So what kind of regulation on the advertising would you feel would be appropriate if it were allowed? I mean, because taxi cabs can't advertise just anything they want into their cab either. Commercials, can't be anything they want without regulation from the FCC.
Well, I'm not going to do the city of Chicago's job for it, but the First Amendment requires that they have a compelling interest, and so if they had a regulation that protected or that limited speech in a way that protected interests, like for example, like you wouldn't want fraudulent statements in commercial advertising, they could do that. And so, I'll leave it to the city of Chicago to find a way that fairly treats ride sharing.
And just, the ordinance was originally passed 2014, so it's a few years later. Why did you feel that a lawsuit was your avenue? Did you try to go back and maybe work with the city on updating that ordinance? I'm sure they do from time to time, or was this your only course of action, and why?
Well, I'm going to let Rob talk about that, because I think that Vugo did talk with the city, if you know.
Yeah, so we did talk with the city. through some various avenues. My co-founder James Belfi, actually, when he lived here, did a lot of that communication. The city, we felt this was our best course of action to pursue forward. Right now, the penalties if a rideshare driver were to advertise in their vehicle is actually $1,500 per instance. So it's actually a pretty hefty fine that's not really warranted.
When did he start talking to them?
About 2 years ago. Yep.
There are no major drivers on front of the city council. Have you been looking for drivers who would be interested in joining yours?
We don't represent currently any drivers. We could, but we think that even just having our client Vugo as the plaintiff can adequately represent the interests.
Rob, can you tell me a little bit more about your business model? How do you find these drivers? Do you go directly through Uber and Lyft to advertise to them?
Yeah, so we advertise directly to the drivers independent of Uber or Lyft. Drivers are 1099 contractors, so they are independent contractors operating their own business. They just happen to use whatever ride-sharing application they're using to get essentially leads for their business. And so we outreach and advertise to drivers to join our platform. Right now we have about 8,000 registered drivers in our network. We're growing at about 100 to 150 new drivers every single week around the country. Our plan is to have around 20 to 25,000 drivers on the platform by the end of this year.
And are there any privacy concerns with that? You say that that Vugo uses the data from the passengers to target ads to them for local businesses and restaurants. Is the passenger informed beforehand that their data is going to be used to target ads to them?
Yeah, so the data that we use is actually entirely anonymous to the passenger. It's not tied directly to like their account within that ride-sharing application. It's data we can get just through normal usage of the vehicle, where you're being picked up from, where you're being dropped off at, things like that. It's really no different than the way an advertiser would target you on the internet, except we don't have nearly as much information.
And what does the device look like? Is it a tablet that's mounted on the back of your
Yep, it's either an iOS tablet, so an Apple tablet, or a Android-based tablet.
Is the tablet owned by the driver, or is it supplied by?
It's owned by the driver. Our application is software only, so the driver would just download our application to the tablet.
So it would just be a continuing stream of commercials while you're watching and while you're sitting in the back?
Yep, it's entirely targeted to the passenger, so it's a mixture of both non-advertising content as well as advertising content. We try to do about a 50-50 mixture of the two, so we don't generate ad fatigue. Nobody inherently likes just to watch ads. However, it certainly helps us monetize and pay the driver. The non-advertising and advertising content that we have in there uses our trip intent algorithm, which is what takes in that trip data and distributes the content back to the platform for the passenger to interact with. So what's in the back of cabs is visually it probably will look similar at first, but once people start to engage with the actual content being delivered, they'll be able to tell it's extremely different. Cabs are the same 10 ads or 15 ads, whatever it might be, on a loop. They're changed in and out maybe once a week. It's just basically a reel that goes over and over and over again. Our ads and content are dynamically delivered. So if you're headed to, say, a sports game, it's going to be more catered towards that experience. If you're headed to a restaurant at night, it's going to be more catered towards that experience.
But that means that the tablet would have to have cellular capability.
Yep.
Are you looking to take this to other cities as well?
Yes, so right now we do operate nationwide. Most of our drivers are actually in the Los Angeles and San Francisco markets.
And you said you moved to Minneapolis after you found out you couldn't operate here. Is there a chance you would move back to Chicago if that ordinance was lifted?
There's certainly the possibility for that.
The device belongs to the driver. So does the driver have to buy the device from you? Do they have to pay to use it? What's the cost of the driver?
Yeah, so the cost of the driver, if a driver already has a tablet lying around their house, most of our early adopters already have a tablet at home, the cost is very minimal. It's really just the cost of data. A lot of drivers are already heavy data users because they're on GPS all the time. So a lot of them have maxed out data plans. For drivers that don't do that or don't have a tablet at home, an Android tablet will run about $160 plus about a $10 a month data plan. Compare that against the ad revenue that's able to be generated for a driver, which can be in the hundreds of dollars. It's a pretty easy, it's a pretty easy decision.
If that's all you guys have for today, I'm sure we could do one-on-one interviews as you need.
Yep. Thank you.